Some storms, you can see coming, they gather on the horizon, a promise of rain or maybe just a cool breeze. But the Antarctic is a different beast entirely. It doesn't just brew a storm, it becomes one. The wind howls like a lost soul, a constant mournful cry that gets under your skin and stays there. For Corporal Davis and his team of 5 Marines, the ride in was a baptism by ice. Their transport chopper, a beast of metal and blades, fought against winds that seemed solid, a physical wall of white fury. Visibility was a joke. The world outside their rattling windows was nothing but a swirling vortex of snow and darkness, a place where heaven and earth had blurred into one unforgiving canvas. They were sent because of silence. Outpost Epsilon, a state-of-the-art research facility, had gone dark 3 days prior. No signals, no check-ins, just a dead spot on the map. High Command gets nervous about dead spots, especially ones filled with expensive equipment and brilliant minds. So they sent the Marines. Davis, a man whose face was a roadmap of forgotten conflicts, felt the familiar knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't a rescue mission. You don't send this much firepower to rescue people. You send it to contain a problem. The landing was rough, a controlled crash more than a gentle touchdown. As the ramp lowered, the cold hit them not like a temperature, but like a punch. Stepping out onto the ice was like stepping onto another planet. The air was so cold, it felt sharp. Each breath, a tiny razor in the lungs. The blizzard was a living thing, a relentless predator that clawed at their thermal gear and tried to steal the warmth from their bodies. The facility was a dark shape against the endless white, a tombstone in a graveyard of ice. Its lights were out, its communication tower a skeletal finger pointing accusingly at the churning sky. Sergeant Miller, a hulk of a man who rarely spoke, summed it up for everyone. "Place looks dead," he grunted, his voice muffled by his mask. He was right. It was a special kind of dead, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The team formed a tight perimeter, weapons raised, their helmet lamps cutting feeble yellow beams into the maelstrom. Every crunch of their boots on the snow sounded deafeningly loud in the roaring silence of the storm. The wind whispered lies, carrying sounds that weren't there, a snatch of a voice, a distant clang of metal. It was a place designed to break you down, to make you doubt your own senses, before you even saw the enemy. Davis knew that the real fight wasn't just against whatever was inside that dark building, it was against the ice, the wind, and the crushing, absolute loneliness of the bottom of the world, a place where hope freezes and shatters. The main entrance was sealed, not locked, but sealed. A heavy blast door designed to withstand the worst the continent could throw at it was partially ajar, jammed by something from the inside. It took the combined strength of 3 Marines and a hydraulic spreader to force it open enough to slip through. The air that rushed out wasn't just cold, it was stale and carried a faint, coppery scent that made them all pause. The silence inside was a stark contrast to the howling gale outside. It was a heavy, oppressive quiet, the kind that follows a terrible event. The emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows down the main corridor, turning familiar shapes into monstrous figures. They moved in formation, a 6-man train of caution and firepower. Every footstep echoed, every rustle of gears sounded like a gunshot. The place was a mess. Papers were scattered everywhere, overturned chairs littered the floors, and computer monitors were smashed, their screens like vacant, black eyes. It looked like a panic, not a fight, but a desperate, chaotic scramble to get away from something. Private Chen, the team's tech specialist, pointed his light at the wall. "Sir," he said, his voice a nervous whisper. "Look at this." Deep gouges, long and parallel, were scraped into the reinforced steel walls, as if a giant animal had raked its claws down them in a fit of rage. No bodies. That was the strangest part. In a place that screamed violence and terror, there were no victims. They checked the mess hall first. Half-eaten meals sat on the tables, petrified by the cold. A coffee mug had been dropped, its contents a dark frozen splash on the sterile white floor. It was a scene of sudden interruption, a moment frozen in time. They moved on to the living quarters, clearing each room with methodical precision. Beds were unmade, personal belongings left behind. It was as if every one of the 30 scientists stationed here had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the ghosts of their final, terrified moments. The absence of life was more unsettling than any corpse could have been. Fear is a funny thing. It's a cold liquid that starts in your gut and slowly spreads, chilling you from the inside out. For these hardened Marines, men who had seen the worst of humanity, this was different. This was a fear of the unknown. The enemy had no face, no name. It was just a feeling, a presence that lingered in the silent, frozen halls of Outpost Epsilon. Davis could see it in the eyes of his men, in the way they held their rifles a little tighter, the way their heads snapped toward every imagined sound. The silence wasn't empty, it was full, it was watching them, and it was waiting. The deeper they pushed into the facility, the more the story of what happened began to reveal itself, written in a language of violence and chaos. In the medical bay they found the first real clue. It wasn't a body, not a whole one anyway, it was blood, a lot of it. Frozen solid in grotesque patterns on the floor, walls, and even the ceiling. Splatters and pools of dark crimson were preserved perfectly by the sub-zero temperatures, an abstract painting of a final, brutal struggle. Next to a shattered examination table, they found a single, discarded surgical saw, its blade caked in frozen gore. It wasn't just a fight, it was a butchering. The scratches on the walls became more frequent, more frantic. They weren't random marks, they seemed to lead somewhere, guiding them further down into the lower levels of the research station. Some of the gouges were so deep they had torn through the metal paneling to expose the insulation and wiring beneath. No human could have done that. No animal they knew of either. The strength required would be immense. As they descended a stairwell, Miller ran his gloved hand over a set of marks. Whatever did this, he muttered to the group, it was big, and it was angry. The thought hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. Then they found the bodies, or what was left of them. In a storage locker, wedged behind some crates, were two figures frozen together in a macabre embrace. Their forms were distorted, twisted into impossible shapes. Their faces were locked in silent screams, eyes wide with a terror that the ice had failed to extinguish. But the most disturbing part was their limbs. They were bent at unnatural angles, some elongated, others fused with the metal of the wall behind them. It looked as if their very biology had been torn apart and put back together wrong, a grotesque parody of the human form. It was a sight that defied all logic, a violation of nature itself. The air grew colder as they reached the sublevels, a deep, penetrating cold that had nothing to do with the Antarctic winter outside. It was a dead cold, the kind you feel in a morgue. The coppery smell of blood was stronger here, mixed with something else, an acrid, chemical odor like burnt wiring and ozone. The whispers started then, faint and indistinct, seeming to come from the walls themselves. At first, they dismissed it as the wind or the groaning of the station's structure, but the sounds grew clearer, taking on the shape of human voices, distorted and overlapping, a chorus of pain and confusion. The horror of Outpost Epsilon was beginning to speak. Desperate for answers, Chen worked to get the security mainframe back online. Most of the systems were fried, but he managed to access a backup server in the central command room, its emergency power still humming faintly. "I've got something," he announced, his fingers flying across a portable keypad. Surveillance logs, last 24 hours before the blackout. The main monitor flickered to life, displaying a grainy black and white feed from a camera in the main laboratory. The Marines gathered around, their apprehension a palpable force in the cramped room. The timestamp in the corner read 2026, January 1st, 3 days ago. The beginning of the end. The footage showed scientists in a state of agitation. They were arguing, shouting at one another. One man, presumably the lead researcher, Dr. Eris Thorne, was pointing frantically at a large sealed containment chamber in the center of the lab. The chamber was filled with a swirling black mist. There was no audio, but the panic on their faces was a universal language. Suddenly, the mist in the chamber solidified, coalescing for a split second into a vaguely humanoid shape before dissolving again. The scientists recoiled in horror. It was clear this was an experiment, one that had gone catastrophically, horribly wrong. Then the camera feed glitched. When it returned, the containment chamber was shattered, glass strewn across the floor. The scientists were gone. All of them. The lab was empty, save for the flickering lights and the open, broken chamber. Where did they go? whispered Rodriguez, the youngest of the team. Playback isn't skipping. They were there, and then they weren't. Chen rewound the footage, playing it frame by frame. There was nothing, just an instant of static, and then an empty room. It was impossible. It was a magic trick, performed by a devil. The unease in the room curdled into genuine fear. The Marines watched more footage, skipping through cameras from different sections of the base. They saw glimpses of movement in the shadows, blurs of motion that the low-resolution cameras couldn't capture. They heard the voices again, this time through the monitor's speakers, faint, distorted pleas for help that seemed to echo from the very footage they were watching. "Help me!" one voice cried, sounding eerily like the scientist, Dr. Thorne. "It's inside me." Then came a scream, a terrible, inhuman sound that was cut short by a burst of static. Suspicion, sharp and deadly, began to grow among them. They weren't just hunting a monster, they were in a haunted house at the end of the world. In Dr. Thorne's office, they found the last piece of the puzzle. His personal computer was still active, protected by a simple password, Prometheus. It opened to reveal his final, frantic log entries. Davis read them aloud, his voice steady but grim, each word landing like a hammer blow. Thorne wrote of a discovery, an alien microorganism found deep within the Antarctic ice, dormant for millions of years. It was a cellular anomaly, capable of absorbing and reorganizing matter at a molecular level. He called it the Chimera strain. They weren't just studying it, they were trying to control it, to merge it with technology. The logs became more unhinged as the entries progressed. Thorne wrote about mechanical intervention. They had tried to create a hybrid, a fusion of organic and inorganic material. Their goal was to create a being that could adapt to any environment, a perfect survivor. The early tests were failures, resulting in the grotesque, twisted forms they had found in the storage locker. The organism was too aggressive, too chaotic. It didn't just merge with living tissue, it consumed it, warped it, tore it apart, and rebuilt it into something monstrous. The science was brilliant, but the hubris was biblical. They had found a god in the ice and tried to put it in a cage. Thorne's final entry was a confession, typed only hours before the station went silent. The organism had breached containment. It wasn't just absorbing biological matter anymore, it had started to integrate with the station's electrical and mechanical systems. It was learning. Thorne wrote that it could mimic sounds, voices. He suspected it could do more, that it could change its physical form, rearrange its own cellular structure to imitate what it saw. "It's not a creature anymore," Davis read, his voice low. "It's a plague, a sentient, mechanical plague. It wears our faces. It speaks with our voices. God help us, it thinks." The realization settled over them like a shroud. This wasn't an animal to be hunted and killed. This was something else entirely, something that defied the laws of biology and physics as they knew them. How do you fight an enemy that can look like your friend? How do you kill something that can hide in the walls, in the wiring, in the very air you breathe? The scratches on the walls, the distorted bodies, the vanishing scientists. It all clicked into place. The organism wasn't just killing them, it was consuming them, adding their bodies, their knowledge, and their voices to its own horrifying collective. They were standing in its belly. The tension finally snapped. A sudden, deafening screech of feedback erupted from their comm system, forcing the Marines to rip the earpieces from their helmets. As the noise died, a voice came through, clear and calm. It was Sergeant Miller. "All clear in the mess hall. Found some extra rations." But Miller was standing right there in the command room with them, his face a mask of confusion and dread. "That's not me," he growled, raising his rifle. The voice on the comms laughed, a distorted metallic sound that grated on the nerves. "Of course it's me," it said. "Don't you recognize your own voice?" Suddenly, the lights in the command room went out, plunging them into absolute darkness save for the narrow beams of their weapon-mounted flashlights. Panic flared. Men shouted, their beams cutting wildly through the black, searching for a target that wasn't there. Then, from the far end of the room, one of the smashed computer monitors flickered to life. On the screen was a face, a horrifying mosaic of static and distorted pixels. For a moment, it looked like Dr. Thorne. Then the features shifted, melting and reforming into the face of Sergeant Miller, then Private Chen, then Corporal Davis himself. It was cycling through their faces, learning them, mocking them. The thing that had been a scientist, then a chorus of whispers, then a face on a screen, decided it was time for a more personal introduction. From the shadows a figure emerged. It was shaped like a man, but it moved with a disjointed, unnatural gait. Its skin had the sheen of wet metal, and parts of its body seemed to flicker in phase, shifting between solid flesh and exposed, sparking wiring. It raised an arm that ended not in a hand, but in a long, sharp blade of jagged metal, the same shape and size as the gouges in the walls. It was a perfect imitation of one of the dead scientists, but its eyes glowed with a cold blue light, the light of a machine. The Marines opened fire, a deafening roar of automatic weapons that filled the small room. The creature staggered back, its body absorbing the bullets, with sickening wet thuds. It didn't bleed blood, but a thick, black, oil-like substance. It let out a shriek, a sound that was half human scream, half machine grinding, and lunged forward. In the chaotic exchange of fire and flashing lights, Davis saw Rodriguez go down, a metal blade protruding from his chest. They fell back, firing as they retreated into the corridor, sealing the door behind them. They had survived the first contact, but as they leaned against the cold metal door, listening to the scraping on the other side, a new, colder terror dawned on them. The chopper was gone, the storm was worse, and the comms were dead. The creature hadn't just been in the lab. The last log said it had integrated with the station. It was the station, and it had just learned their faces. The hunt was far from over. For them, it had just begun.